Hey Tonloc, remember that stage where like G.I. Juice said something like he would save 1,000 embryos instead of the like 6-year-old child?
I remember that
Oh
bit.
yeah. What about it?
I don't remember what your position was on that. Would you do the same thing?
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I don't see a problem with that. I agree.
What if it was like instead of 1,000, it was like two?
Save two.
Two embryos over
Save
the 6-year-old child?
save
Yeah.
two? No,
Why
but
not?
how about this? How about
Those
this?
feel more
It's
compelled.
saving more lives. It's
The
saving more
6-year-old
lives.
the 6-year-old's
Yeah,
arms are
but
outreached and they're coughing and they can't breathe and they're saying, Tonloc, Tonloc, please help me, Tonloc, Tonloc. Would you just be like, yeah, I got something over
Yeah.
here. Hang on a second.
Yeah,
I
you,
gotta
yeah,
save
you
these
love
embryos over here.
yeah, you love the dramatics, don't you?
I mean, this is an interesting trolley problem, but he's got a good point.
to be honest,
Like,
I would feel.
I
To be honest, I would
really
try
doubt
my
that you would
perspective.
it would play out the way that you're imagining it here. Tonloc or
Let him
Tonloc,
answer.
whatever your name is.
Let him answer.
I mean the real issue is it comes to a number of different factors. I mean, in real life, firemen have to make decisions like this all the time, man.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that
Mhm.
they can't save certain people doesn't mean that they value them less. It's just they have to do what they do in a particular situation. It's not a normal situation. So
Yeah, and firemen
Agreed.
are always going to
definitely.
save the actual children over the hypothetical ones.
Well, I mean, that's what the whole debate is about, though. So, I mean, if that's the view that you take,
You
then
can
fine.
make it
then
an
that's
actual
not my
trolley
view.
problem.
Yeah, and
And
I'm
just-
going to give you enough credit to think that
Likewise,
you
it's
would
not my
actually
view.
do the same thing.
You
in
can
that
pull the
situation.
lever and the trolley runs over
the
two
issue-
embryos, or you can not pull the lever and it runs over a
Let's take
6-year-old
down the
child.
trolley maker.
Well, the
That's all
issue
I do.
is, let's just say that I did save the 6-year-old over the two embryos. What does that prove? Does that prove anything? Not really.
I mean,
Well,
it demonstrates that you
prove
value
anything?
actual people over
I don't-
embryos, which is good.
No, it
That's a
doesn't.
good quality.
It
Raj,
shows-
it is really good that you.
No, it
Exactly.
doesn't. At best,
It was really good that you grew up.
And
at
It
best,
shows
it-
your
No,
position. It shows your
no,
And I
position.
get.
let me put it
And I
this
get.
way.
Oh, go
Let me
ahead.
put it this way. What it will show, actually, or what an argument you could easily make is that it will show that I have a particular perception in which I'm conditioned to that might be caused to save the 6-year-old over the embryos.
Careful now.
It
You're
isn't.
starting to talk like your brain made you say that. Careful, brain fizz.
Well,
Careful, Mr.
well-
Molecules in Motion.
what I'm getting at is this: the fact that we are conditioned to do certain things does not entail that there's an ontological status of more or less value over someone.
Well,
I
we
mean, that'll
haven't
be like
gotten there
saying that'll be like saying that because people are conditioned to think black people are less than others, that therefore
the next-
their ontological status makes it the case. I mean,
This is the next
people-
step, though. This is the
Hey,
next
Tom,
step. We established what your position
Tom-
is, right? That let's say you do save the one over the two. Well, why do
Well-
you save the 6-year-old over the two?
Actually, I
Or
would
vice
argue that
versa,
that's not a good analogy.
or vice versa. Why is it that you save the two embryos over the 6-year-old child who's begging for?
Well, I mean, number one, I could say I saved the two embryos because there's more people to consider long term, and I'm looking at it from a long term perspective. That may be an argument to save the two embryos, or if you want to make an argument to save the 6-year-old, maybe you'll feel like the fact that immediately relieving that 6-year-old of a stressful situation, in terms of the fact that those embryos don't have any cognitive ability to feel anything, maybe you'll look at it that way or something like that too. But again,
But that
it's
sounds
the
like
real
some kind
issue.
of utilitarian
But what?
reasoning.
But there's no entailment of some ontological value of status that you place one over the other. That just doesn't
It might
follow as
be.
a rational entailment.
Well,
Hey,
not
Tonloc, I do want to.
not
I
on
do
its
want to
own,
say
no.
that. Excuse me. I do want to say this to Tonloc. I understand your point of view, right? As someone who's pro-life, and you want to remain consistent with your standpoint, right? It's just, I would, I don't know. It's just like me personally. If I was in that situation, and God forbid, there's like a house or a building burning down, I had the option of only saving that 6-year-old child or that, that container of embryos, right? I get the logic of you want to save the most people as possible, and that's to remain consistent with your standpoint. But to be honest, it might seem contradictory, but to be honest, I would feel more prompted just almost instinctively to save that 6-year-old child. The idea of someone screaming in agony from burning alive is much, much, much more disturbing to me than, embryos who, don't get me wrong, they're humans too, humans in development as well. They're fertilized eggs. But I would feel more compelled to save the child. I'm sorry, but a little girl screaming in agony from being burned alive, that's just, that very thought is extremely disturbing.
Think about it this way. What if there was a white dude and you had 2 screaming black children that he could save versus 1 screaming white child, and he saves the white child? Does that prove there's some ontological status of higher value because he decides to save the white kid instead of the 2 black children?
No, we're talking about the perspective of what that individual feels is the case, right? So he has an ontological value hierarchy, and that's what we're talking about. Like, the fact of the matter isn't. I mean, we know that you think what you think the fact of the matter is, right?
Yeah, my feelings don't determine the ontological status of anything, though. Because if that was the case, then the racists would be clearly justified in their feelings about stuff.
So it doesn't necessarily indicate anything about the ontological value, but it indicates what you value subjectively. And I think there's a reason that you do value these things objectively, because I think on some level you recognize that there is a meaningful distinction between an actual child and an embryo.
Even if that were the case, how does that disprove any ontological status because of my subjective values?
Yeah, that's just going to be a watch.
There's gonna be situations, for instance, like maybe people would be in a dilemma to save, I don't know, a total stranger's child over their own kid. That doesn't mean that they have some ontological higher status in saving their own child. That just means that they're, emotionally attached to their kid, so they'll primarily aim to save their kid first.
There's another thing too. There's when you're in a fire situation, you don't have that much time to think. It might be easier to get to 1 or 2 of them as opposed to the others. And
that's irrelevant because you're just going outside of the hypothetical.
You got to make a choice to at least save one. Well, why are we playing hypothetical games when in reality you would never be faced with something that's?
The argument needs to be is demonstrating that your feelings has any effect against an ontological argument. Does that prove that there's no? No, does that show that there's no ontological status because of how you personally feel about something?
That angle, Tonloc, is just a wash because you're going to say that, you choose the embryos, but then we can just say that the fact that you chose those embryos doesn't mean that they have an ontological higher value.
Answer my question. Does that show that there's no ontological value or status because you have a personal feeling about something? Yes or no?
And it's not just to say no value.
It's not just to say okay, so it's essentially a red herring because you're just talking about you look at your feelings about something. Therefore,
it's not just about my feelings. A child screaming in agony. It's a child screaming in agony from being burned alive. Like, know what I mean? Like,
I'm just saying.
Like that doesn't instinctively make you be like, let me go save this little girl. That's just me.
That kind of value argumentation would justify racism and all type of stuff.
No. Yo, Sally, nice choice. Hey, did someone turn the AC off? Anyway, I gotta go. I gotta grab this Barbasol can. I'll catch you later.
I mean, again, you can make the same sort of value argumentation for racism and all sorts of stuff, and it's still, I think, it's just as flawed when you apply it in those ways too.
What it comes,
I don't understand this argument you're making.
No, the argument is if you have a personal sort of perception about something, that means you personally value it in a certain type of way, which means that you don't actually think the other entity that which you wouldn't save has either lesser value or any value at all. But again, even if that were the case, that doesn't prove that there's no ontological value or status for that being. Well, that just means that you just have a personal perception about something.
Tonloc, the term value itself is a subjective statement. Like, value is an implicitly objective thing. things have value because we value them. And so when we ask these questions, the question is about what you value, not about if there's some hypothetical ontological value. Like, I don't even think that's a thing.
Well, that's the argument that you would have. That's the argument you have to make, because you're essentially begging the question to just rule out any ontological question from the outset. You would have to make that argument.
Yeah, right, so the ontological, what I'm making here is that the ontological doesn't matter because we, the human beings, are the ones who have to make these decisions. Like, the reason why we come up with this as an analogy is as to the abortion debate, whether or not what our laws should be. And part of that conversation is the degree to which we value embryos compared to children or adults or some other stage of human development. And if
you can make that argument with racist too,
that we value embryos less because of the subjective experiences that children can have that embryos can't have, I'm sorry, that Flute Master mentioned, the child is actually capable of experiencing fear and pain and death where the embryos aren't because they don't have any cognition. Like, we're the ones who make those decisions, and so our opinions about it and our feelings about it are what actually matter, not some ontological hypothetical value.
Yeah, great. Let's say I go with that. You can make that argument for racist too. What's your point?
What do you mean you make that argument for racist? What does that mean?
It means exactly what I said it means. It's just because you're talking about certain people we may value over others. Again, racists have that same sort of argumentation. Like, what is your point?
I don't know.
My point is to determine whether you, Tonloc, value actual children more than you value embryos.
We know that now.
A racist person can say that. Hold on, wait. A racist person could say that the people they don't value aren't actually human beings or not actually children or whatever.
I mean, they could.
This happened all throughout history.
No, they wouldn't. I mean, Raj, you're completely wrong there. They wouldn't value them as humans. That's what he's trying to say.
No, I'm saying they would be factually incorrect about whether or not they're human beings. I agree, they could value them less or not value them at all.
You just said
they're not human.
Sir, you just said the ontological status didn't matter. Now you're talking about they're factually wrong as if to imply some sort of ontological fact about the matter. So you first said it didn't matter. Now you're saying that it does.
No, I'm just saying, you brought up the idea that they could say that they're not human beings. I'm like, okay, they can say that. As far as like the classification of human beings and how that works, like they're just incorrect about that fact. It doesn't matter in any meaningful sense because you're right. They could choose to value them less because that's how racism works. But
and it's the same sort of thing. You can say that they're not children. You can say that they're not human beings, which is pretty much what a lot of people on the pro-choice side say all the time.
I don't know.
I don't say that they're not human beings. I say that their rights have less value than the rights of human women.
It's like ontological angle you guys are doing. I'm going to tell you right now, it's like pretty garbage, right? So, look, Tonloc. Dude, Tonloc, listen. Hold on, dude. I waited for Tonloc to finish. So, Tonloc, the question, the hypothetical is for us to kind of like figure out. You told us your position. We're like, oh, okay, but does he really think that? And then we gave you the hypothetical, and then you said you'd take the 2 embryos over the little girl. So like, well, hey, there it is. I mean, that's consistent, and we'll just have to take your word for it. I mean, whether or not you would actually do that, who knows? Like, I kind of suspect that you wouldn't, but whatever. We'll just take your word for it.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. I could say that applies to you guys as well. Do you really believe that these embryos aren't children? Do you really believe that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think they're children.
But if you can start motive. Hold on. Wait. If you can start motive questioning or something like that, then fine. But I can do that same thing to you guys, and then we're back in the same stupid situation. Now
I question it, but ultimately, look, I question it, but I mean,
they think they're animals. They don't believe they're human.
I can easily question that you guys don't really think these beings in the womb are not children. I can question that myself too.
Sure,
where does that get us?
But the position that's being taken by someone who's pro-choice would not fly in the face of that. Like if you're saying
be supported by like performing, having abortions, and supporting abortions be done, right?
Like,
medical science says they're human embryos, right? So for you to say they're not human,
I can just easily say you guys believe this in spite of the evidence against it. That doesn't prove anything.
Yeah,
it's true.
Well, like, look,
so
just,
an abortion.
but then you would have to. Sorry, go ahead.
I would stay out of this one, Spooky, because it's just gonna get personal because you're female and they're not gonna say nice things to you. So I
she's a big girl. You can let her make that call.
Hey, listen, I'm just trying to be a gentleman about it. That's it.
Oh, you're trying to be a gentleman like the other day when you were talking shit?
For the record, I'm only part of this conversation because you guys brought me into it. So I just want to let that be known.
Clawing and screaming is something different.
So look, I think Spooky raised a good point.
The guy was like, "I'm going to be a gentleman about this."
Look, I think this whoever I don't know, it's Spooky. I think she raised a good point, right? So what you observe from the atheists or the left, right, is pretty consistent with us not thinking that they're children, right? But I mean, I think
it's not, because you're not given the same rights to the embryo as you would to any other human. So essentially,
that's consistent with thinking that they're not humans. Yeah,
they're not human. Do you say?
They're not.
Well, it's consistent with not ascribing like personhood or like the same amount of value as we would to like.
So what would you say is personhood? Like, just what would you say is a personhood? Just as a question.
Excuse me.
The point of it was to say that like, if you're trying to question whether the values that are being espoused are actually what are like what pro-choice people believe, I mean, like it is consistent with what we're arguing for.
Excuse me, may I right. And what you feel is ultimately a red herring. It's beside the point.
Look. So then we pause. That was the entire purpose. Of
just being logical and rational.
Look, that was the purpose. That was the purpose of positing the hypothetical to Tonloc, right? And Tonloc, to his credit, Tonloc was 100% consistent with his professed view, right? However, I think that we could propose other like scenarios where he's probably not consistent with that view.
Because he's all right.
I mean, I can give you an example.
Not only was he sticking with the view, but he was correct in his view. Like I make that distinction.
Whatever, dude. That's like in question right now. So whatever.
No, it's not.
Again, why does personal feelings matter in this situation? Are we trying to get to the truth of the issue? How we feel about the issue? Which one?
But we can get
because
to that.
There's no truth with a capital T to be had. There's just a bunch of humans and their opinions about this stuff.
You're begging the question right there. You're already presupposing from the outset that there's no ontological truth to be looked at in this issue. You got to make an argument for that.
No, but isn't that?
I mean, these are people who believe that babies aren't humans. So
look. Can I just give you the?
That's my point.
They don't really have any value judgments to begin with. So
let me just give you the hypothetical.
The crux of the
right,
argument. Sorry, go ahead.
It's like they think they're subhuman. It's like racist.
It is the crux of the argument to believe if it's human or not. That's where the argument is.
Jesus Christ, man. Why do you want to talk about like the stupidest
Thomas
shit?
started to pray. Cool. All right. Nice. Oh, I thought you were going to start to pray. All right, go ahead.
If it's the case that you actually think that embryos are people, right? Then
no, we're talking human. We're talking human.
What, dude? Just
human. So you said it's not human.
Human embryos. I want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So if that's the case, right, we would expect to see things which I haven't observed you doing, right? And maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it would be the case that as soon as any woman conceives, right, at the moment of conception, the moment that they become aware of it, there is now an official human being plus one that's entered the world, right? If that person dies, there should be an investigation, there should be paperwork, they should be into the system, right? And if there was negligence involved, that mother, if she smoked a cigarette, if she went out to playing racquetball without the proper precautions, if she was drinking, if she was doing drugs, if she was lifting heavy packages that she wasn't supposed to, right? Mm-hmm. Manslaughter charges should be on the table.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the desired instinct.
I mean, double jeopardy does exist.
I've never
in some states.
I've never heard a single proponent. I've never heard a single proponent of pro-life advocating for this type of law.
I mean, it's already there, so you don't have to advocate for it.
But what I do see I do see is hundreds, probably thousands of miscarriages every year all across the globe, right? Probably outnumbering actual abortions. And every single one of those is a possible manslaughter case.
No, they're not, because unless you're attributing bad faith to every single incident, then of course, then it's not going to be like a.
That'll be like saying.
Well, how would you
No,
know?
no,
The point he's trying to make is you need to investigate to know.
No, you don't have to investigate every miscarriage.
Just to be clear, there are 23 million miscarriages per year, like globally.
Such a weird argument.
Okay, so
such a weird argument to make, because if you're starting with the hypothesis that they're not human, right? So what are they then? What are they if they're not human? Are they fish?
No, that's incorrect. No, that's incorrect. You're exactly wrong. You have it completely backwards, right? For the purposes of this hypothetical, what we're doing is assuming Tonloc's view that they are human, right? And if under Tonloc's view, if these people are human and there's miscarriages that are happening, well, then there are possible manslaughter cases, and they ought to be investigated.
No, they're not possible manslaughter cases unless they're actually.
I can easily flip this on his head and say, well, if you want to show that you're truly pro-choice from your side, you would, within reasonable boundaries, make sure that every single woman who goes to consider this is informed about every single choice possible. You will do the most maximal research to make sure every woman in your life who considers this is informed about every single choice possible. And if you don't make this maximal effort, then you must not be truly pro-choice.
That doesn't follow.
That's not what happens.
I find it interesting how
we're using the same line of reason that you just employed, saying
that is what happens.
I find it really interesting.
That is what happens.
This doesn't even work because I can give you it's anecdotal. Granted, it will be anecdotal from this perspective, but I can give you many different stories of women who were in fact not maximally informed on all their choices, and the fact that if you guys as pro-choicers wouldn't have educated these women, that has no mitigation on any argument that you guys are pro-choice just because.
But pro-choice doesn't entail maximum education. It entails
it doesn't, because you're an idiot. So you guys don't have maximum education.
Wait, can we be honest here? There are only three outcomes when someone is pregnant, right? Like you can either, or I guess, maybe four if you would make a differentiation between like the pregnancy being terminated, whether it's through like miscarriage or abortion. But so you could either miscarry, you could have an abortion, you could give birth, or I guess you could give birth and put it up for adoption or something, which wouldn't even really be a different thing from giving birth. I guess,
so abortion shouldn't even be a choice in the equation.
You left one out, you can die. That's another option.
That's ridiculous because there's more things that come with that. Like if you give the baby up, you could give the baby up to like a safe haven location. If you consider adoption, you may consider like closed versus open adoption. If you decide to have the kid, you may consider what available options there are in terms of assistance programs and governmental assistance. And
wait, but are you trying to say that like this isn't something that women are informed about if they like go to Planned Parenthood or something like that?
They generally think that pregnancy is just a minor inconvenience.
I'm telling you that there have been stories.
Virtue signal card.
I'm just telling you that there's been many stories. There's been many stories in which many women have reported they didn't in fact have access to all these resources, or at the very least they know all these things.
Like I'm just saying, I can grant it. I mean, look, I'll just give you an analogy, right? If I'm like pro marijuana, right? That doesn't entail that I think that everybody on their 18th birthday or whatever age it becomes permissible, they should be offered a joint.
That's a terrible analogy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, here's another example of the pro-choice thing. The other side of the pro-choice thing is also pro-allowing women to remain pregnant if they want to remain pregnant, even if there's associated risk involved. And I'll give you a real-life example.
What are you talking about?
So there's my friend Nikki. So Nikki was pregnant, and she was super stoked about it. And she found out during her, I think it was her 16th week of pregnancy.
This is funny.
She had cancer. And so she basically had the example that she could get chemo, which would inevitably result in the loss of the pregnancy. Or she could carry the pregnancy to term and roll the dice whenever it came to the cancer. So she chose, because she was pro-choice, to remain pregnant, even though her doctors are like, you really need to get chemo or you could die. And guess what happened? She died. That sucks. But that was her choice. She exercised her autonomy over her own body and made her own decisions for what she wanted out of her life and for the life of her kids and her family.
The reason I laugh is because you asserted that there was an other side to people allowing to have a pregnancy, which is forced abortions, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, that's a thing in places too. Like Saipan, for example, forced abortions was a thing. Pro-choice also means the right to remain pregnant if you see fit. But it is control over your reproductive freedom. Swings both ways.
But the point is, this maximally extended argument is not even a serious objection, because that would be like saying, if I am against child abuse, that means I should be for like installing cameras into people's private homes or something to like spy on them 24/7 to make sure they don't abuse their children or something like that. And that's not what that entails at all. The fact that I have a particular position doesn't mean that I'm for probing women 24/7 or watching them like this or something to make sure that they don't do something bad to their babies or something like that anymore. That would mean
these are all just weird arguments, to be honest. They don't make any sense.
Surveilling them. After they have had a miscarriage is the only time you need to actually question things.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like how
and what is the problem with that? What's the problem with that? The fact that you don't like it?
That we wouldn't like necessarily, be questioning every person at some point like that is alive. Maybe once they reach adulthood or whatever for murder, but like if they become a suspect in a murder that's already been committed, then yeah, you would fucking question them. So
you generally go by what you know, not what you don't know. If you got reason to suspect someone, then you do the investigation. I don't see how that would be any different. I don't see how that.
That's close to that individual is instantly like questioned. Like
it's really
to gather information or whatever.
No one questions anyone with miscarriages.
Like, it's just really simple.
I don't see how that would be any different, because the fact hold on. You got to think of what was done before. The fact, like, abortion has been illegal before, at least in the United States, anyways.
Yeah,
you guys got to look at what they did before, okay? It's like you guys don't even
regarded as an
check
abhorrent
basic
practice.
history whatsoever.
I don't see what that matters.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, it does. No, what it does matter is because you guys making it seem like they couldn't adjudicate cases like these because like killing babies in the womb was illegal. They couldn't look at this type of stuff. Clearly, they did.
What?
No,
but you think that's a natural, you think that's a normal thing?
To just what you previously said, every non-baby that dies, goes missing, whatever, they are investigated, Tonloc. People don't just say, shrug their shoulders and then just like, that's it. They investigate it. They do autopsies, they do tests, they ask questions.
When?
They don't just shrug it off.
When
a young child or an infant dies.
But this is still beside the point.
When a baby is killed in his womb, and it's under.
You don't think that there's any difference between a 6-year-old man dying and an embryo dying?
This is still
why do you want one investigated and not the other?
This is still okay. This is still.
I've never had. So when I had miscarriages happen, there's no investigation. If that's what you're saying, that people do the investigation after a miscarriage.
This is still beside the point, anyways, because you still have not. Hold on, wait. You still have yet to give any positive arguments for the pro-choice position. This does nothing to facilitate any positive arguments for the pro-choice position whatsoever. So you're still you're just still evading the essential point of matter here.
No. If you don't affirm that there should be manslaughter, like in these investigations in these situations, then you must. What's the explanation? You actually don't.
You're once again going back to my. You can once again go.